Hi there. Welcome to JSpeak Solutions, JSpeak of the Week. I'm Jane Archie, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this business of beauty. And in this business, and in times like these, why could we possibly need a resume? I know that people think that resumes are not needed in our business at all. And I think that that's so unfair because it's true, we need them. A resume is a time for you to look at your professional journey. It's a time for you to look at what you've been doing, what you feel, what your goals are, without actually sitting down and writing goals. I had to sit down. This is my goal. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. I had a hard time doing that. But I did think about all those things. And so by putting together a resume, it is an opportunity to analyze my skills and my talents. It gives me a chance to evaluate any of the things that I want to do and what I'm doing toward them. So a resume is necessary in our business, but it's most necessary for ourselves. It's like a savings account. You never know what's going to happen. And in days like these, we don't know whether we're going back to the salon that we came from. We're going to try to open our own business. We're going to do a total pivot and do something else just to make money right now. But if we're going to do any of those things, we've got to know kind of who we are and what our skills are and what our talents are, and then how we can provide those skills and talents to an employer. So as a savings account, we don't know what would happen. And if we put it together and we are looking for a new position unexpectedly, you have something where you know how to put together a presentation of yourself. I also think that a resume builds confidence. It tells us about ourselves, and sometimes, especially at times when are hard, we don't pat ourselves on the back. We don't look at how well we're doing. We don't congratulate ourselves for where we've been and then where we want to go. And so it is a really good way to look at what our skills and talents are. And it's a really fantastic way to fill out an employment application. Because instead of trying to struggle with an employment application at the point in time that you're filling it out, you will have put together all your answers for that application in the form of a resume. So there are some positions that in a corporation that require a formal step. And the very large or operations, they're going to always ask for a resume because they want to know the salient points about you. They want to know exactly those things that they're looking for and whether they match you. And it's going to be something that's going to be matched by a computer generally in a large corporation. So it is something to think about as you put it together. So a resume also allows you to be comfortable answering any questions about who you are or why you're interested in a position, because a resume is going to demonstrate your level of professionalism to an employer. And that part is very underrated. We talk about first impressions, we know how important they are. And when you have put together something that tells them about you in an excellent way, it's going to make a fantastic impression. So let's talk a minute about, okay, what is not a resume? It's a myth that it is something that an employer is always going to ask you for. They may not ask you for it, but they are grateful, I'm telling you, to receive it. A resume is not the history of your life. It is not everything you've done from the time you left high school, if you left high school, until now. It is not something that you throw together at the last minute. A resume is not really a document that you send out to everybody for any job. That's not what a resume is. So, what is a resume? A resume is the key to an interview. And if it's a key to an interview, then you got to know who it is, what door you want to unlock. So, a resume really is a list of our skills and ability. It is some of our history of our work and experience. But if that resume is not focused on the door you want to open, the key's not going to fit and you're not going to get the interview. Why is it the key? Think about it. When a job position is posted, that's a need. It's a need that an employer has. And the person who gets the job is able to fill that need or solve that problem. So Almost all positions are filled after some type of interview. Whether or not you have that personal contact is very important, because employers, even new employers who are not sure about things, want to know that there's some kind of relationship between you, that there is this personal contact where you have shown that employer how you can fit into the company culture. And we can talk about that company culture at another time. A resume does open the door for an interview because it lays out the possibility that you're going to be the one that's going to solve their problem. And again, an employer always has a problem to solve when they are looking for a position. Let's talk about the important parts of a resume. It's not as terrible and as awful and as sometimes long and convoluted as you think. It really is 4 major areas. The first is your personal information. Real simple. The second is a summary. We're going to talk about that summary in depth. The third is your work experience. And the fourth is your education. That's what a resume is. It is a concise sample of who you are. It is not everything and all things. So let's talk about what those parts should look like. Your personal information, your name. Oh, and don't put nicknames. But you don't have to put every name. You can put the name that you are generally called, or the name in which information can be looked at for you. So your email address. Let's talk about making sure you have a really professional email address. I love eating at hotmail.com doesn't say much about you. And so if you have to create a new email to put that on the resume, a simple email with your name or some idea of your name and a number is always much more professional. Your phone number, and make sure that both your phone number and your email are things that you use and check regularly. If you live at home with mama, that's fine, and mama answers the phone, great. But if you put a phone number and you never answer it, or you put an email and you never look at it, how are you going to know when the employer actually reaches out to you? That's your contact information, and that's all you have to put. You don't need your street address. You don't need all other information than that. Very simple. Name, email, and phone number. Now let's talk about the summary. That's a lot harder. The summary is the reason that you're going to fill the needs of the employer. So the summary is something that actually reflects what the company is looking for and your skills to meet that. The summary is something that's going to change every single time you send out a resume for every single position that you are interested in. That's the piece that you have to tweak each time. You're not going to tweak your personal information. You're usually not going to tweak your education, but you are going to tweak your summary, and that always has to be something that reflects how you fill the need of the employer. A lot of people write objective. Your objective is to get a job. They know you want a job. That's why there's a position out there and they're looking at a resume. So you don't have to tell them. Your objective is on your end. And a resume should reflect what they want. So a summary should reflect a good piece of information about why your skills will match what they are looking for. So it's research that you do, hopefully, and research that you've done about the company, where you can actually have some of the keywords that they have listed in the job description in your summary. If you're looking for a position, I had so much fun sometimes. I'd be looking for a position in our beauty school, and I'd want somebody who could answer the phone and who could put in data information. And I'd get a resume with the objective that they wanted to be a nurse's aide. A resume has to fit what it is that the employer is looking for. And if you're not sure what the employer is looking for, that's the purpose of research. That's the purpose of finding out a little more about the company. That's the purpose of you doing research and matching what keywords. So if a person is looking for somebody to answer the phone, then your skill of having been working in customer service and answering a phone, or being a waitress, or doing jobs where you are in the constant public contact, that's important to put down, and those are important skills that might match what the employer is looking for. Remember, the summary basically is not what you want, it's what the employer wants. So it's going to answer the question, how can I solve their problem? That's how you think about writing the summary. How can I solve the employer's problem? Now, work experience, it's a showcase of your skills and experience that reinforce that you're the best candidate. And I know that sometimes in the beauty business, people feel like, well, I haven't done this, I haven't been in a salon, I haven't. No, but our biggest skills are always service and sales. And so if you're putting in your work experience things in which you've had experience in service and sales, then you are telling them exactly what they want to hear. You can use your work experience in a different order. You can highlight more work experience that might fit that category, but work experience should not be an extensive part, long, and it should not be all kinds of things that you've ever gotten. It should be a relatively easy way to explain how you've worked in the last 10 years. You don't need more than 10 years back unless there's an experience more than 10 years back that actually coincides exactly with what the employer is looking for. And you do have to explain gaps. You don't have to explain them in the resume, but if you have gaps in which you worked a couple of years and you didn't work, then you worked a couple of years more, you know that an employer is going to look at that. Nowadays, they don't look at that as they used to. Nowadays, changing jobs, nowadays having different experiences is a benefit. It used to be if you didn't have a job for 10 long years, you didn't have history. No, we know that people go from job to job, and well-deserved experiences are gained when you do that. And so employers just look for a gap, meaning that you've been confined, you've been in jail, you've been too sick to work. And so you need to be ready in any kind of interview to explain what that gap might mean. And the last part, your education. Oh, and I meant to say this in work experience. Try to always start with the most recent experience and work backwards. And so you do put your present job, if you're in one, unless you haven't told the employer and unless you don't want that employer to know that you're looking for a job. For your education, you always, again, start with your highest level of credential and you work backwards. And again, it doesn't have to be, please don't put anything that doesn't relate. You don't need all the certificates you went or continuing education that you had. That's the kind of stuff that you do talk about maybe in an interview, but you don't add that or you don't include it with a resume. Personal hobbies, references, awards, your interests, none of that goes in a resume. Again, you're trying to write something that answers an employer's problem. And the interview is when they're going to really ask and try to get to know you. And that's where you're going to highlight those things. What a resume should look like? Simple. It should be simple, straightforward, no sentences. A person who is looking as an employer, as a hiring person, they take about 7 seconds to look at your resume. Now, remember I told you they may go through a computer? That's why that summary has to have some keywords, because the computer is going to look for keywords that are part of the job description for that position. If you don't have any keywords at all in your resume, that resume doesn't even get seen by a person. So you have keywords, you want to put them in there, but you also want something that's simple and straightforward, because the person who's hiring is going to take that piece of paper and they're going to spend 7 to 10 seconds looking at it. And so it's really important that you have everything kind of laid out easily and very concisely. That's why no sentences, very simple. No fancy paper, no illustrations. And I really don't suggest that you send your photo. If they want a photo of you, they're going to ask you for that later. Same thing with references. They're going to ask you for that later. It's not something you add at the beginning or on a regular resume. It is a single page generally. Unless you have extensive experience in something that they're looking for, a single page will do, okay? And it's not handwritten, it needs to be typed, and it needs to be easily attached as a Word or a PDF, because you may be sending it by email, you may be uploading it to their website, so it has to be very simple. So understand the summary and the work experience and the order that you list things may change, but that's all that's going to change. So writing a resume for each position is not as overwhelming or terrible as you might think. Okay? Well, one other thing I want to say about resumes, it's your key to your review of yourself. It's a time where you look at your talents. And oftentimes that key to an interview, that may be a phone interview. You may not get a personal interview right away, especially in times like these, or you may get a Zoom or a discussion like we're having now. But you need to be ready. Okay, so your resume gets you ready, but also you're going to need to be ready in our business with a portfolio of your work as it pertains to that position. If you're going to a blow dry bar, they don't want to see the finger waves you do. If you're going to a salon that specializes in men's haircut, it's really nice that you do a lot of updos, but the portfolio you should have is just the section of what you are doing in that part. So if it's men's haircuts, then you have your section of men's haircuts. That's your portfolio for that position. You should be ready. Oh, and by the way, those portfolios, it can be on a tablet, it can be on the phone. It should be something easily accessible. Even though somebody might not have Wi-Fi, then you should have something that you can show them. So the idea of having a scrapbook is still something important in an interview, because oftentimes there are places where you might not have any Wi-Fi to show your Instagram portfolio. If you have it printed out and you have it in a book, then it's easily shown. One tip I always had, those photo frames that you can upload with a jump stick. You can upload your pictures onto the photo frame. All it takes is electricity. It doesn't have to be a Wi-Fi, and you have a portfolio that's always available to you if you have a plug. So you can always bring that little photo frame, and that's something that can show your work. You got to be ready with a model, because in our business, you're going to have to show, not only tell, but a resume is the thing that's going to get you to do that presentation and that demonstration. So you have to be ready with a model to show off your practical skills. You do need to practice some common question answers. Tell me about yourself. That's the one that everybody uses, and to me, it's like the hardest. But if I've written my resume, I'm going to tell them my summary. I'm going to tell them a little bit about me that answers their problem. And I'm going to be focused on them. And that's why that's going to get me the position. And last, you're going to have three references generally, of people that have either seen your work or been working with you, that are going to be able to say something wonderful about what you do. And the employer in general these days they're going to call references. They're going to look at all of your social media. So those things are going to be important in terms of how you deliver and the kind of person that you are in getting that position. So a resume is going to help you out. A resume is going to be the thing that you can lean on to know all of the things that you've done and to pat yourself on the back for what you are doing. That's why it's important in our business, because our business is a business. You are in the beauty business. In fact, you are actually the business, and that's the hardest thing for some people to understand. Anyway, we've talked a little bit about resumes. This is JSpeak Solutions. I offer high quality, no reading, continuing education for Texas cosmetology license renewals and accredited schools around the country who need extra continuing education can use my course for that. Check me out at www.jspeaksolutions.com, and I hope to see you next time for JSpeak Solution of the Week.